all ECUATESOLers that you are here presenting, that you are here today, and for the ECUATESOLers that follow our YouTube channel, and they will be part of this amazing webinar that we have today. So remember, this round of webinars is from the series number 2, organized by ECUATESOL, the Ecuadorian Association of Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages. So, before we start today with an amazing presenter and a great presentation, I would like to start mentioning that this month, December, is gonna be the last month of our webinars to get your certification. So, if you are willing to receive your certification of 40 hours from all the webinar series number 1 and number 2 organized by ECUATESOL, get ready for our next webinars. Our next webinars will be on December the 12th, which is this week on Wednesday, and then our last webinar that is gonna be at the end of the month. So be aware of our social media, our WhatsApp group, and get ready to receive news and the final evaluation to receive your certification. All right. If you want to have more information about it, we're always willing to receive any email, text message, or phone call so we can continue giving you more information about the certification. All right, so let's start today with our webinars. And remember that ECUATESOL is an official affiliate of TESOL International. You can find us in TESOL International website. And we work as a partner universities and institutions with Yachay Tech University, Universidad Nacional de Educación, UNAE, and ITEP that are our sponsors. Do not forget as well to follow our website. So if you are not part of our website or have news about our website, this is the QR code. So you can QR code and you can put follow, and then you will receive information that we post every time about in our website. A part of that, this is the QR code for our ECUATESOL Instagram account. We don't have Facebook, we just have Instagram account. So please QR code us and follow us in our social media so you can receive the information about our webinars, job opportunities, and future training sessions. Remember that 2026 is gonna be an amazing year. On 2026, we have our Congress. So some news you will be informed at the beginning of the next year, so you can get ready to be presenter or to participate in our Congress that we will have in 2026. A part of that, this is our registration code. Remember that to receive your certification, one of the requirements will be to be registered as an ECUATESOL member so you can receive the benefits to receive the free certificate. All right. And finally, this is our WhatsApp group. The same thing, follow us in our WhatsApp group so you can receive information about job opportunities, updates of ECUATESOL, and presenters as well. And finally, the last but not least, this is our Gmail account in ecuatesol@gmail.com. So you can send any kind of information, recommendations, and if you want to be part of the group of volunteers that we manage around Ecuador, you can just text us and be part of our amazing community of English teachers in Ecuador. Part of that, this webinar that today is being recorded is going to be published in our YouTube channel, so you can find us at ECUATESOL, and that's our official channel, so you can observe all 20 webinars that we are having these years, and you can repeat again or you can check information. A part of that, in those webinars, we have always the contact information about our speakers, very well-known speakers from Ecuador and from another parts of the world, so you can contact them if you have any, if you want any information about their presentations. And finally, not letting our presenter to wait more, today I have the privilege and the honor to present Alex Alarcón. I have requested him to be here in our webinars because I know his talent, I know his professionalism, and I know that he has been working with me. He was my ex-student and he works with me as a researcher in some projects. And I have the honor today to present him. Alex Alarcón, he's a former student, or he was a former student of the second cohort of the Pine Unai University from the major of pedagogy, in which during his formation was able to familiarize with Ecuadorian educational context through practicum and teacher practicum. He was part of the Learn project, the Leadership in English and Research Network, that actually we as researchers, we publish a book, a very interesting book about the reality of Ecuador. Welcome to visit that book, it's free. And in the role of, he acted as a role of researcher in that amazing project. He was part of the Language Center of the University of Cuenca, in charge of the English area, developing lessons from level A1 to B1. His areas of development and interest embrace skills, develop preparation for standardized tests, develop innovative resources and teaching strategies, and classroom environment. Currently, he is part of the UNAES Language Center, where he works with students from different levels and develops projects and strategies that can be incorporated inside and outside of the classroom. Today, he is presenting a research paper, a narrative inquiry study called What Are Some Practices and Outcomes Beyond the English Class? A narrative inquiry about the English teaching learning process. So, he's an amazing teacher, amazing presenter. So it's my honor to present today Alex. And I hope that you enjoy his presentation and take advantage of his expertise asking a lot of questions. So welcome, Alex. The stage is all yours. So thank you very much for being here and welcome again.
Thank you so much, Professor Daniel. Thank you so much, everybody, for being part of this wonderful workshop. As Professor Daniel mentioned, it's such a great experience for me working with him one more time. We have taken part of different projects, and the purpose of this workshop is to show some results about a pretty nice project that we carried out with Learn and show what we have seen and what can be done to change the scenario, the educational scenario of English learning in Ecuador. So, more than welcome, and I hope that you enjoy this presentation. I'm sure that we're going to have a great time. And if you have any questions or you want to know a bit more about something, feel free to ask me. So, are you ready to start? Great. So, here we go. To start, let me show you what are some. To start, let me show you. Give me a second. Here we go. Yeah. Today, I'm going to start showing you my paper presentation and what are some of the results, how was the experience itself, and what we could find, and how it can define the English practicum, especially in our classes, responding to an Ecuadorian context. So, this research paper is called What Are Some Practices and Outcomes Beyond the English Class? It's a narrative inquiry study in which we're going to reflect about the teaching and learning process. Before starting with our presentation, I have a little question for you. Are you into cake? Do you like cake?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
some of us do. That's amazing. I love cake as well. And let me show you what are we going to do. Oh, look what we have here. It's a wonderful cake, a strawberry cake with some cherries in it. So I'm going to ask you for a little activity. It's just a little riddle, a little game. Here we have a beautiful cake. We need 8 slices. But in order to do it, you can do just 3 cuts. 3 cuts are allowed. My question for you is, how would you do it? How can we get 8 pieces just with 3 cuts? Any idea is more than welcome. If you want, you can turn on your microphone and just tell me an answer, or you can write it in our chat box. How would you do it? get 8 pieces just with 3 cuts. So let's go. What are your ideas? How would you cut this? How would you cut this cake so we can get 8 pieces? I know it's a bit challenging. So we're going to give you a couple of minutes and then we're going to take a possible solution, okay? So if you have any idea, you just need to type it in the chat box or just tell me. How would we get 8 pieces just with 3 cuts? Let's see. Wow. Okay, Michelle, go ahead. What is your idea?
Hi, teacher. So for me, maybe I try one circular cut and two straight cuts.
Wow. Thank you, Michelle. And yeah, that's a pretty good solution. And that's actually one of the things that we can do. Well, maybe the cut is not so sharp, but thank you, Michelle. Yeah, exactly. It was the answer. So we can divide it by the half and make 2 cuts, like an intersection, like a cross. And then we can get our 8 pieces of cake. So what happens with this solution? How did you came out with this? How did you came out with this solution? Well, as you can see, it is referred to a pretty interesting concept that we're going to check. And this is about thinking out of the box. Yeah, just a regular solution like cutting it in 3 pieces wouldn't have worked. So sometimes we have to think out of the box. Have you ever heard about this concept before? About thinking out of the box? And what does it refer to? Thinking out of the box. Any idea? Just think out of the box. Well, so when we talk about thinking out of the box, it's sometimes related to creativity. It's like having the capability or the ability to think on creative solutions. And at least for me, creativity is such an essential characteristic that a teacher must have. Maybe based on your experience. Do you know why is creativity an important skill? Or maybe do you have any interesting story related to this about a problem that you were passing through and an interesting or creative solution just came out to you? So, any nice experience about it, about creativity? Well, we have some ideas. Oh, great. We have a solution here. Thank you. Great. So, have you ever thought on something creative or that came out of the blue and was brilliant? Any idea is more than welcome.
Well, I think, Alex, that all teachers, we are very creative, but sometimes we believe, no? And I'm pretty much with my years of experience at the beginning, I always believed that some students are not capable of doing something. And when you challenge them to do something, you realize that everyone is able to do it. First thing, for example, some teachers believe that if you speak all the time in English to your students, you said, but I speak in Spanish to my students because they don't understand when I speak in English. That's not true. If you challenge your students to speak all the time in English, they will get used to that. And also, that's part of the creativity of you to design material for the student to be able to understand in English what you are speaking. Provide more vocabulary, give them some games and activities for them to practice. For example, a creative thing that I have done with my students is at Yachai Tech University, we have the CBA club, with each is about teachers take care of dogs that live around the campus. So they have their own club, and they take care of the dogs with food and everything, but they don't have a budget to support that. So they do activities. So what I usually do with my students every semester is I create a fair, a food fair. So my students, a part of practicing their English, they create their own cooking recipes. They have to create a marketing plan. They have to sell some tickets for food or for raffles and everything. And each group collects money to then donate to this CBA club. So the students have fun, they practice their English, and they do something for the society. They feel very proud that they did something, that it was not only like donate money, but they covered that money to donate. So that's an activity that I like to do every semester with my students, and I have received very good feedback from them.
Wow. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Professor Daniel. But it's true. Sometimes when we refer to the classroom, creativity is such an essential skill. Why? Because the learning process is not something linear, and students learn in different ways. Also, we must respond to different needs, context, and particularities in our classrooms. So, being able to be creative, think out of the box, try to make learning meaningful is such an essential characteristic that each teacher must have. And it's absolutely correct. And in a certain way, when we are creative, we're also pushing ourselves as professionals beyond our limits. And we are also trying to provoke a positive change in our societies. So it's true, creativity is an essential skill for every single teacher because we learn to take advantage of some weaknesses or aspects that can be improved inside our classrooms. For example, talking about previous lessons, when I was starting my job at Universidad de Cuenca, there were some lessons in which I didn't have so much students, so my activities had to change. And you have to think at the moment, how can I adapt something? How can I make it a bit more entertaining? Or how can it be more meaningful? So, providing students the opportunity to explore that creativity as well is essential, like creating projects or through the implementation of new activities, something that is not their usual thing. Like when I was with my first class, we created a kind of science fair. So we made some projects, some science experiments, and we were learning the content. We were learning English, but putting it in context. So that demonstrates that lessons can be fun if we incorporate creativity in it. And the limit is in our mind. So very good. Thank you for sharing those beautiful experiences. Now we're going to check something. In this case, that's what the study is about. We're going to learn about a teacher in a high school who tried to use her creativity to make a positive change in her particular context. In this case, in her high school. So now we're going to listen a bit about her story and what did she do to transform her classroom. Thank you for sharing. And now let me show you this. So before going to the case, this pretty nice case, we're going to check a bit about our reality. As some of us know, as teachers, there are some particular things in our background, in our educational background itself, regarding to school and high school. So Some things that are part of Ecuador's educational background are our Ecuadorian EFL curriculum, by the year 2016, the time allotted for English lessons. Also, there are some common beliefs regarding learning a new language and the level of organization. So we're going to check them little by little, starting with our Ecuadorian EFL curriculum. Well, what happens with a curriculum? Curriculum corresponds to the macro-curricular level of organization. That means that both schools and high schools must follow it in order to know what contents we're going to learn during the time in our school. But what happens with curriculum, especially with the EFL curriculum? Well, a particularity about this curriculum is that it doesn't focus just on the academic performance or acquire academic knowledge, but it also refers to our capability or the foundations to coexist within a society. So the curriculum considers certain values, which are justice, innovation, and solidarity. Based on that, they try to create professionals which are not academically efficient, but who can also coexist or work together in a group, like a society. It prepares us not just with academic content, but also with skills to coexist with others. Maybe, have you ever had an experience in your job when we are new in a place, it's not just about the level of performance or the things we do, but also how we can connect with our colleagues and how we can create boundaries in order to make things better. So Ecuadorian EFL curriculum emphasizes that the need of coexisting in a society. In that way, we respond to the needs of the 21st century, which refer to a globalized world and our capacity to coexist with other people, to live together within a society and as part of as society itself. That is our first step, curriculum. Then, what happens with English lessons? Especially talking about public schools, during my experience there as teacher in my practicum, I could observe that the time allotted for English lessons is too short. In public schools, during a week, we just are provided with 3 class hours, 40 minutes each per week, which is too little. And in some cases, as it happened to me, there are some schools that don't have an English teacher. So practicum students become their teachers, and the rest of the year they don't have opportunities to learn the language or to practice, which in a certain way can influence their future development and it can provoke a delay. Because as you know, in high school, English becomes a compulsory subject. So having this lack of preparation won't be beneficial for students, and it's a reality in our public schools. English lessons are just provided with 3 class hours, 40 minutes per week, which is too short compared to the time allotted in private institutions. So, what else? There are some common beliefs regarding learning a new language. As you know, our official language in Ecuador is Spanish. So, what happens? Some people, there's still this belief that English can be considered irrelevant in daily life communication because there's a lack of projection to the future. Like, we're not going to leave the country. So, what's the purpose of learning a new language? And it's a reality that we have seen in different spheres of the society. Like, I don't have the need to travel somewhere else. So, there's not a reason to learn a new language. And there's also a common
No.
belief that learning a language is difficult and it should be restricted to people whose professional development requires English. As you know, there's that idea that, or maybe have you heard this by your classmates, or maybe colleagues, or even students? Oh no, teacher, English is so hard to learn. It's not for me. That's not my thing. So, this part of the mindset, like the idea of learning a new language as something difficult, can also affect the performance. and the willingness to learn a new language. Maybe, do you know any other common belief regarding a new language or learning a second language? Anything that you have heard on the streets or by friends or by family? Anything? What are some common ideas about learning a new language? Maybe any experience that you would like to share?
Probably.
Oh, yep, we can hear you, Juan Carlos. Oh, mhm.
Okay. I was just trying to figure it out if my microphone and video works. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. I was reading what you posted. Uh, many maybe English is considered irrelevant in daily life communication. A lot of people think or they believe English is only what they learn in high school or university. I mean, just grammar, and they think, oh, I don't need this in real life. In real life, we make mistakes. Probably that people are, some people, or many people are afraid of learning English, or they don't consider relevant to learn, even though now, because of the media, uh, English should be easier at this time of life. Um, what else can I say? Same thing for any other language, German or French. They say, "Oh, I don't need this." That I might that probably if an English teacher, but I think they do. We're more focused on a vocabulary or expression that they need in real life. It might help. Like let's say if you're teaching, especially for institutions like to learn English. I'm not talking about high school or the university. Let's say if someone says, I want to learn English so badly. Okay, they go to that institute and they should be learned, also they should be taught to learn something they need when they go somewhere. Let's say next week I'm going to have a party with gringos or expats. Okay, I'm gonna teach you phrases of something you need in order to communicate. I mean, we might, or the teacher might skip those grammar spot and focus on that information that the students need. Uh, this is not the idea, and I don't know.
That's fantastic, Juan Carlos, and that's pretty right. There's this, yeah, it's absolutely correct. Because in some schools and high schools, we have the conception that learning a language must be just focused on the on the grammar component, but not the skills itself.
Yeah.
So when we face reality, we suddenly realize that it's also about how we communicate our ideas. And in some cases, there's a lacking of that, which is absolutely correct. And thank you so much for sharing such an insightful experience. And regarding to what Juan Pablo mentions in the chat books, it's absolutely true. Because as teachers, we have seen that some students consider themselves bad at learning any other language, like they don't have the skill or the talent, or that they are incapable to do it. So that frustration is something that can be prejudicial for their language learning in the future. And as teachers, we have seen a lot of this in our classrooms. Perhaps some things that come not just from the starting of their studies at the university, but they come from way, way farther, like from childhood or even during their teenage years. So it's true. Some people consider or they have said or mindset that they are not good at learning a language, which is true. Thank you, Juan Pablo. And also Teresa points an important point that we are living in a globalized world, so we need to learn a global language as English. And it's true. It's related, as we said, with a 21st century profile, that we must be able to coexist in a society. And also, and as all of you know, English has become in that vehicle language, the only one who can provide us with the opportunity to share with others. And those are pretty interesting insights. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing. And it's true. As you can see, there are some ideas or things that we have to deal with in order to learn and to make a positive change. Thank you for sharing. And now we're going to check something else. What happens with the level of organization? Well, as you may know, our country, regarding the educational part, is organized in 9 zones with a total of 140 districts. But what's the purpose of this organization? Well, it's done with the purpose of improving the management and optimizations of resources of the country, but also it was created with the purpose of responding to specific needs of each particular region in our country. As you may know, challenges in Guayaquil are not the same that we're facing in Cañar or in Cuenca or in Santo Domingo. So as you can see, each context is different, and that's the purpose of each district. They provide solutions responding to particular contexts. And in the case of Ecuador, we have 9 zones. So it's just to build a bit of context, a bit of information. Now we're going to take something else. Being a bit more specific, between those 9 zones, the study takes place in one place, Zone 6. Zone 6 is located at the southern part of the country, which comprises 3 provinces, Cañar, Azuay, and Morona Santiago. But in this case, our research is going to take place in Cañar. And let me give you a bit more of context. In the case of this school, this was located in a city in Cañar, in an urban area, which offers classes from 8 to then create a basic education and from first to third year of high school, BGU, or Bachillerato General Unificado. As you can see, it's a high school, and it had some specific areas of professionalization, like agronomic degrees or mechanics. As you can see, it was a high school located in an urban area in Cañar, Zone 6. So we're going to learn a bit more about the context. What happened in this case? As I told you, this was a narrative inquiry, but little question for you. What's a narrative inquiry? When we talk about narrative inquiry, it refers to a type of research. As you know, we can collect data or know reality in 2 different ways, quantitative and qualitative. When it refers to quantitative data, we talk about numbers, data that can be analyzed. It helps us to understand what is happening. But this research, this narrative inquiry, is made with a qualitative nature. The purpose of this research method is understanding human experiences, trying to understand why something is happening. So we study human experience, and the way we do it is through understanding people's stories, their personal stories, which are called narrations or narratives, and to see how these stories make sense of their lives, how it affects or how it influences people's lives, events, and the world. But also putting special emphasis on context, where it is taking place, what are the situations going on, temporality, when is this happening, and also the age of participants, and also their relationships. Are they students? Are they teachers? What is their role in this whole puzzle? So, to put narrative inquiry in a more simple context, maybe talking about high school years. Yeah, do you remember high school? Beautiful, right? So, may I ask you, when you were at high school, what was your favorite subject? What did you like the most? What was your favorite subject at high school? Maybe what was your, oh, go ahead, Franklin.
Okay, when I studied in the high school, I my favorite subject was artistic and physical education because this kind of subject were more interactive.
Amazing. Thank you, Franklin. That's such a wonderful detail sharing that. Oh, Teresa mentions
Nice.
literature. Ilse mentions maths, literature. Okay, as you can see, we have a common pattern. We have high school, right? Like a whole experience, but our favorite subjects are different. As you can see, the situation is the same. Oh, somebody else mentioned something. Henry also mentioned literature. As you said, we all have passed through the same situation, which is high school, starting at high school.
Gracias.
But our perspectives are totally different. Some people are really good at maths, some people love literature, others are good at physical education.
Okay.
In my case, it was history. So as you can say, a same experience, but different at the same time. Like many words coexisting in a whole universe. And all of them are true, all of them are valid. That's the richness of narrative inquiry. All of them are true, all of them are real, and all of them are valid. So, through this little example, as you can
Sí.
see, we learn a bit more about each other, which is wonderful. And it's nice. You have a good taste in subjects. I'm glad. So, yeah, this was a narrative inquiry. As you can see in this research, we compared a case which were English lessons, but how each student and even teachers perceive these lessons. How was the experience for them? And we're going to take it little by little. But thank you for sharing. Now we're going to check something else. Give me a second. Here we are. First of all, I'd like to tell you a bit about our teacher. In this case, she was new at high school when I joined in this research project. Oh, it was in 2022. Yeah, 2022. I was just 21 years old. I was still a student, so I had to look at some time to study at a university, but also work on this project. And I used to visit this teacher in order to make this research. And when we got to know each other, I could go along the school, and it was beautiful. They had lots of green areas and a broad space, and classes had a lot of natural illumination, which was interesting. And the space was quite big. Classes were large. There was enough room to move. So that was a nice advantage. But when we met the teacher, she was new in high school. She had been working there for just 2 months by that time. But she had 9 years of experience being an English teacher. Something nice about her is that she studied pedagogy. And she also lived in Canada. So she had a pretty good accent, according to what students mentioned. But let's go little by little. What was the situation when we firstly joined? She told me that she was working with the higher levels of high school, which were second BGE and third BGE, which is the equivalent to senior year. So she was working with 5 groups of second and third year of high school. Another particularity are the sizes of the classes. As you know, generally we have from 35 to 40 students per class in public schools or public institutions. But something nice about this high school is that classes just had from 22 to 29 students in class. So as you can see, it's a number which is easier to manage. And a particularity, there was a class with just 3 students. Yeah, that was quite interesting. And when we first joined, there was enough room to move. But we're going to see the experience in more detail a bit further. But yeah, more or less that was the context. She was a new teacher. She took, she had a pedagogy degree. She lived in Canada, and she was working with the higher levels of high school. Now, what happened? She also contextualized me during our first interview. What was the classroom setting? What was going on in high school? So she mentioned that students come from rural areas, and many of them have been facing through different problems. Among them, there were a lack of interest of students in high school in general, not just the English class, but high school itself. So they were just thinking of perhaps dropping out, leaving high school, or not even studying at a university. So it was a reality, a lack of interest in high school in general. And also, there were some serious issues like parents' migration. So there were kids who were living on their own with uncles or with their grandparents. Teenage pregnancy, which was common in that high school, girls from 15 to 16 years old being pregnant, and in some cases asking for permissions or stopping with their studies because of that. That was a high, that was a big problem in that high school. And also some drug addiction cases, which was real. So something that happened with this teacher is that she took part of TESOL, best practices training course. And what happened is in this training course, the teacher was able to learn some methodologies, strategies, and also activities that could be integrated into her lessons. And what she did was just besting her creativity and integrating every single thing she learned. And the results were really interesting. So let me show you what we found. So, what were her thoughts? She mentioned that part of her philosophy as a teacher was not just focusing on students or individuals in a classroom, which are there just to learn content, but as human beings. So she mentioned that when she sees that kind of problems in a classroom, what she tries to do to alleviate those problems is trying to have a good relationship with students, like presenting herself as a friend, not as a figure of authority, but as someone close who is there to listen and who considers them as human beings, which she has told me and I have witnessed has helped a lot to improve the learning process. But she mentioned that when you see problems in a classroom, your duty as a professor or a teacher is trying to have a good relationship with students and somehow try to alleviate the problems and leave them out of the class. Leave the problems out of the class. Another problem that she found out was that some students were thinking about leaving high school. The level of dropout is really high, so she mentioned that something important is providing support. She had a phrase, and she used to say that when she had the opportunity to talk to students, she used to encourage them to keep studying with phrases like, you should keep studying. You'll be so proud once you get your degree. Or if you go to university, you will have more opportunities. So she tries to encourage them to go farther, to push their limits. And that ability of pushing limits, it's also seen in the classroom. She mentioned that something that she could see when she first joined to high school was that students unfortunately don't like to think. So she likes students to think on on her classroom. She used to do exercises and make errors intentionally and ask them, is it correct? Some students used to say, yes, yeah. And then she used to ask, why? So she can see that part of reasoning about what you're learning is part of her philosophy, is part of her style as a teacher. Like making students think out of the box sometimes. And in and as a general review, here we have a little map of what were some highlights of this entropy. And there are some issues, there are some problems, especially regarding to students' personal life. But what a teacher tries to do is providing a safe place to learn, to express themselves, and also to learn. So we will see in detail what did this teacher used to do. So what are some activities that this teacher used to use? As we can see, she used to incorporate some constructivism elements. We will check them in further detail, but We're going to check the other side of the coin first. What were students' thoughts about English lessons? How was their learning path along their life? So, let me show you. So, in a way to summarize, what was the learning experiences for them? Students mentioned that classes were not really good with their previous teachers. There was a lack of understanding to the teachers, and learning was just about basic things. So, according to Queen May, the author mentions that there are five problems or five situations that can influence language learning. One of them refers to previous experiences regarding learning, the weakness of learning foundation. If students didn't know the language so well, they would be reluctant to participate in class. There's also this lack of learning motivation. As we mentioned before, there are some ideas or beliefs about learning a language. So students try to carry out with it. So they believe that learning a new language is pointless. So there's a lack of motivation that can influence their learning process in a negative way, sadly. Also, we can talk about post trauma. When we refer to post trauma, it refers to previous experiences that were not so favorable or that could affect their learning process. For example, getting bad grades or being unable to communicate. All these experiences can provoke trauma and it can turn into a problem in future learning experiences as well. Also, there are some ineffective learning methodologies. As you mentioned before, as Juan Carlos mentioned before, in high school, sometimes English lessons were just grammar lessons. So there weren't enough opportunities to practice skills or to do something interesting or to use the language in context. So there's a bit of inefficiency in language methodologies. And also, students have other needs besides the classroom. As you see, they may have some problems or difficulties that, even though are not part of the lesson, can affect how they feel. So, just in a summary, we can summarize students' experiences as the next ones, and I have been quoting some of them, which were really insightful. One of the students mentioned that when he was in school, English lessons were not particularly good, and the problem with the teachers was that they didn't really know the language itself. So the person who was in charge of teaching English was not an English teacher. And when the student finally had to be in high school and English became a compulsory subject, he had to learn by obligation. And at the beginning it was complicated because there was a lack of foundation that quite might says, like, if I don't have enough background knowledge, it will be complicated adapting or succeeding. Also, another student mentioned that in school, learning wasn't really effective, that they just learned basic things like greetings, like saying good morning, good afternoon, and that was all. But in high school, it was totally challenging because they had to learn different things with different teachers. And currently, that student felt satisfied with his current teacher because he thought that he was able to learn something. And there's another case, a student that, with a bit of grief, told me that his learning experience in school was awfully bad, and also in high school, because when he was in eighth grade, in another school, he had an English teacher, but she didn't used to teach her classes. And one day, the teacher was summoned by the principal, and her behavior started changing. She was way more mean, and she was teaching, but not in a good way, not in a good mood. So when this student came to this new high school, he met different teachers who awakened his interest in learning English. But there was a challenge with methodologies. Some of them were not really good, or there were not opportunities to practice. But what happens with this current teacher is that he feels that there's something that has changed for good, and it's that he can understand his teacher really good. And we will check why. We will see why this change has happened in a bit. But yes, you can see most of the experiences regarding previous educational levels were not so positive, especially because of those problems. There was a lack of interest, in this case by some teachers or sometimes by students. There was also a problem with content. The foundations weren't strong enough. There wasn't enough content to be able to communicate. And also, there were some beliefs that changed students' perspective about learning a new language, like putting it in the mindset that learning something like a language is difficult. But as you can see, something in common between all these experiences is that they perceive the new lessons as something favorable. Now, what are we going to do? Now, you're going to share with me. Maybe did you have a bad learning experience regarding English in your learning process? How was it, or what happened? What made it difficult? In your case, what was challenging, or any bad experience regarding using the language or learning the language? Well, so in my case, I remember a case of a student. She told me that when she was learning at high school, her teachers weren't so polite regarding feedback, and then it generated a trauma, and she was unable to speak. So when she was in my lessons and we were in the exam spot, what I used to do was trying to put her back to back so she was able to talk until she tried to gain confidence one more time. And as you can see, it happened in high school. It could have been like 10 years ago, but even though it happened 10 years ago, it's something that still has consequences in people's learning process. So that's an experience that I can share with you regarding some not so positive experiences about English learning. So good. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to check something else. As you can see, there weren't so pleasant experiences about previous teachers, but what about the current lessons with a teacher who took courses with ECUATESOL? What was the change or what did they perceive? In this case, students mentioned there was a pattern between the different interviews, and something that they mentioned lots of times were that this new teacher provides clear explanations, good activities, and she keeps a good relationship with students. And as you can see, all of this is related to what the teacher mentioned in her interview. So we're going to check some experiences. What did the students share? So some of the thoughts were that something positive about a teacher is that she understands them. When they didn't understand a topic, what she used to do was trying to find a way to explain it one more time, but in a different way, until students understand it better. And something that the teacher used to do was providing students with different activities so they could practice something that was beyond the English textbook. And they also considered that the teacher was well prepared to teach the language because she had a pretty nice accent and she used to speak English all the time. But she used to find ways, like using gestures or mimicry, in order to being easier to understand. So as you can see, there's a noticeable difference between other teachers who didn't used to speak English during the English lesson and this new teacher. Also, another student mentioned something good, which is patience. And she has found a way to make lessons interesting and different to other things that they had said. The use of new methodologies, um, time to make questions, and they also mentioned that they were able to reflect about what they were learning and that she used to allot pretty short minutes of the lesson to explain the topic, and the rest of the class was about practicing different types of practice activities from free practice, like projects, to a bit more controlled practice. So as you can see, there are different activities that she incorporated and it made this class something memorable. And there was a particular case because we also had a native speaker in her lessons. So what's the challenge when as teachers were facing a lesson where there's a native speaker? Is that sometimes we think that there's nothing new to teach, but through this experience we learn something good. This student was a native speaker, a native English speaker. He came from the US, but he also mentioned that he takes private lessons in Cambridge Institutes, and in spite of that, even though he's a native speaker and that he takes extra classes, he always finds the high school teacher's lesson interesting, meaningful, and as a positive learning experience. Because she incorporates activities, she tries to make every single student learn and understand the topic. And as a native speaker, he also learns some words or some concepts or curiosities about the language. So as you can see, sometimes working with a native speaker is challenging, but finding a way to make the class even interesting for someone who's already familiarized with the language is something that was great, especially because the student mentioned that the teacher manages lots of concepts of linguistics, grammar, pronunciations, and the way how she stores the lesson is something that makes the change and makes the classes understandable and nice to attend. So, as you can see, there are different experiences, all of them positive, and they remark the importance of teaching activities and also innovation. Innovation in a certain way, doing activities that they didn't used to do regularly with other teachers. However, another remarkable point was about students' reasons to learn English. According to Ryan, he mentioned the concept of intrinsic motivation. When we talk about intrinsic motivation, we refer that we are not learning something because we want a good grade, like a 10 over 10, but we're learning something because we consider that learning this can give us positive changes. We can get something from it. We can take benefits. It's like learning by pleasure, learning because I know that it can help me in the future. So, this concept of intrinsic motivation was also mentioned by some students, and it had pretty interesting reasons. We're going to check some of them, but they remarked communication with family, professional development, and it's a way to help family. So we'll check the first case now. It was a student or an interview patient who mentioned that she has a brother who lives in the United States. And since he was born and he raised her. He speaks almost no Spanish. So she considers that learning English would be a vehicle to communicate with his new brother. As you know, we mentioned that some parents tend to migrate to other countries, and this was the case. This student's parents migrated to the US, and she hasn't seen them in years. And now that she has new brothers, the only way to communicate is through English. So she mentioned that during the English lessons that she has been having with this teacher, she's finally having the opportunity to learn to speak, to express herself in English. And that is something that hasn't happened before. So she's thankful with this and she tries to take as much advantage as she can from these lessons. As you can see, it's an intrinsic motivation. I do something to learn to communicate with my family. And there were some other nice cases. One of them was about a student who told me about her grandmother. She told me that her grandmother's dreams were moving to the US and perhaps learning the language, as she always wanted to learn English since she was young. So now this student is taking what she learns in her current English lessons and tries to teach her grandmother to learn English. And she can also provide help and support to her brother who's learning English as well. So as you can see, that's another case of motivation. Students find a reason beyond a grade to learn a language. In this case, the student finds English useful because she can teach her grandmother and help her to accomplish her dream, and also to have her brother with homework. And there was also a case of a student who mentioned that she was thinking about dropping out of school, but now she feels that she's really capable of learning English, at least the basic stuff, and her dream is becoming a flying attendant. And so far I could trace, this is true, this is happening. As you can see, that's this intrinsic motivation when we learn something in order to make a positive change in our lives. And it was nice seeing those experiences, how they share their dreams, and how these lessons on learning English has helped them along the way. Also, what were some future expectations about this? So, once students finish high school, they were asked, what would your ideal English lessons be like in the future? Like in third year of high school in some cases, or at the university. And I mentioned that they expect three things for their future lessons. A teacher who could be patient and supportive, like the current one, integration of videos and images, and also interactive activities to practice. So we're going to see some experiences. Something nice about implementation of this activity and the performance of this teacher is that somehow we could see that she managed to change the mindset of students in a positive way. One student mentioned that he really liked the English lessons, that classes are fine to him, and that anything should be changed. But he also emphasized that future teachers must be patient and look for the best strategies to help students understand the topic better. Because when subjects get complicated, or there's not a person who's able to teach it and make it understandable, some students lose interest in learning. So he hopes that in the future, he will meet patient teachers like the current one. And also, a student pointed out the importance of having more English hours in public education, of course, because he recognized that for some degrees, like like computer science, which was his case. He wanted to study that. He needs much more learning background, English background learning. So what he considered is that we should increase the time allotted to English in public education. And this can help us to overcome this gap, all those problems in the classroom. So as you can see, in a slight contrast from what students shared about their previous experiences and their current ones, what are the keys or the reasons behind this succeed? So the first of all, creativity and innovation. As we mentioned, creativity is an important skill for a teacher. So what I could see is that she used to play with elements like the layout or with activities and to make the lesson creative and interactive for students. Like she even mentioned that students didn't know what to expect. So having this capability to innovate can make positive changes regarding education. And that's one of the keys of succeeding, sorry. And something good was that she also used to play with the layout. In high schools, we used to sit in rows, not looking at each other. But what she used to do, especially with a class with three students, was playing with the layout. So they had to be together and share and move with different groups or to different spaces. So her ability to play with the layout, the way students are in their places, or maybe on the floor, or maybe outside of the classroom, that change in layout can provide a certain factor of unpredictability. And when that happens, when students don't know what to expect, they are less reluctant to participate in more activities because they get used to it. Because Konopka mentions that one of the challenges about implementing activities is that sometimes students are reluctant to do it. Like they don't feel that they like to do it, or that there's a resistance to proactive learning. But something good is that this teacher uses activities and the classroom layout to make them feel good, to make them feel comfortable, and to have a good time. Also, there's something important, which is reporting motivation. According to Kalina, she mentioned that language can occur when students are challenged, when they are open, and when they are comfortable, and while they give their full attention. So it's important that teachers must learn to open themselves for the class, and show them that it's a safe place. It's a safe place to learn, and it's a safe place to make mistakes and also to improve. So what this teacher used to do in order to promote rapport was that she used to incorporate humor. And she had such a close relationship with her students. They used to make jokes and they used to share. And during the breaks, they used to say goodbye or hello to her using English. So she said that humor sometimes is a good strategy. So students can feel close to you, they can trust you, and if they trust you, they are able to participate, they are eager to collaborate with you in class. So as you can see, having a good relationship with little things like humor or playing a bit is something that can be really helpful in our English lessons. And it's also related to a concept given by Stephen Krashen. He mentioned the affective filter theory, which states that we learn when we are comfortable, confident, and we feel that we belong to a group. Then we will absorb the input and make progress with it. As you can see, when we feel comfortable in a group, we're okay with making mistakes. We are also eager to participate because we know that it's a safe place where we're not being judged but we're being encouraged to keep learning. And that's what happened in these lessons. Students always mentioned that the teacher was really good at connecting with them, and they felt accountable because they knew that nothing wrong was going to happen if they made mistakes. So, what are some lesson characteristics? In general, students found their new language lessons as a cheerful experience, exciting but at the same time challenging. They used to do role plays, they used to work in teams, they used to do mingle activities and lots of games. But also, they mentioned that it was nothing compared to what they used to do in previous lessons or with other teachers, where they were used to translation or just completing activities in a book. But here, they had to create content, they had to reflect, and they had to also use their creativity to create a good product. And also, the students mentioned that there's confidence. They feel completely confident to ask questions in class. They were comfortable saying that they didn't understand a topic, so the teacher repeated it in different ways with different examples, sometimes with new activities. And as you can see, they were free to ask, they felt confident, there was a good relationship, and she also used to incorporate jokes to have a good rapport in class. And she always tried to explain the topic until the students understand it. So it's a total change compared to other lessons. Here students feel better. I could witness that they feel better. They participate. They like to be in the class. They feel accountable. And they use the language. And their results are really good. Because in activities, in output activities like speaking or writing, they used to do it really good. So there's a change. There's an improvement, even contrasting previous grades. And some good characteristics about her lessons, or something that we can define, is that the lessons were constructivist. So when we refer to constructivist lesson, we can try some activities. But what she used to do, or what was described as innovative, was the integration of practical activities. 5 minutes of explanation and 30 minutes to practice. That was the key. Also dynamic activities such as role play or the development of a group product, like a project, a presentation, anything. There was a lot of group work. Students also mentioned that in previous lessons it was quite individualistic, that they were on their own. But now teacher incorporates a lot of group work in her activities. And she also uses questions to help students to reflect about their content they're learning. She provides opportunities to check if they understood a topic or not. And also, she uses questions and activities to see what else needs to be improved in future lessons. So, what are the final thoughts? What were the reflection after taking part of this research? Well, the things that I could learn, and that honestly have also influenced the way how I see pedagogy. They have also influenced my teaching style, are the next insights. One of them is that learning is not related exclusively to what happens inside the classroom. As you know, we're learning every day and everywhere, but we must reflect about it. We must reflect about the learning experience and that we can use students' interests, their uniqueness, and their experiences, fears, motivations, and expectations for the future to create our lessons, to make them feel like home, to make them feel safe, and that it is going to be helpful for their future. Also, that there's also a way to implement innovative methodologies. And these methodologies and strategies can be really helpful tools because these provide opportunities to learn by having fun, learn in a meaningful way, and also these are opportunities to practice and use the language. As you can see, innovation sometimes just comes with other ideas, like playing a board game or playing something like the snowman or the hangman in the board, or using flashcards, or incorporating a game. As you can see, the limit is our imagination, and it's saying that it can be really beneficial for students, and they actually enjoy it. Also, it's important, absolutely important, creating a good classroom environment so students and also teachers feel comfortable. It becomes in a safe place where they can go, share, and learn together. So building rapport, being a good environment, is essential to succeed in class. Besides, it also gives me a deep insight about the teacher's role, that we're not limited to store content in the lesson, that we just don't go to the class and teach what we're intended to teach. But being a teacher also requires being a model, supporting students, becoming enclosed people, someone they can trust, being being self-reflexive and critical with ourselves. So we can also provide better activities in order to help our students. And also to identify students' strengths and weaknesses, to provide activities or appropriate strategies that can support them, even in particular cases. It's like the part of humanity, like considering my students as people, as individuals with personal thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and dreams, and supporting them. So the teacher's role is not just providing content, but also giving a strong foundation of values and abilities that can be used even beyond the classroom. So it's our reflection time. After this pretty nice experience, what are your thoughts? Maybe is there something that you learned today or that you would like to incorporate in your lessons? Is there any experience, any nice experience with a classroom that you would like to share? Or also, is there something else about experience that you would like to know? Anything. I'm more than open to listen to your questions and address them, and also to listen to your experiences. So what do you think now? What did you learn today? Something interesting? Any thought is more than welcome.
Are you a new teacher?
Sorry, maybe can you hear me now? Great. So, based on this little reflection, what are some things that you can incorporate in your lessons? Maybe something that can be implemented in your teaching style, or something that you would like to know a bit more? Or how would you innovate in your class? What would you do? Or how would you support your future students? And a thought is more than welcome. Right? We have a nice experience. Amazing, Teresa. Thank you. Yeah. Teresa mentioned that as a teacher, The best way to engage students in the learning process is involving technology in our classes. I absolutely agree with that. And as you can see, it's a step of innovation. We're incorporating games, rules of presentation, we're also the use of AI, artificial intelligence, can be also pretty useful in our English lessons, like providing opportunities to practice speaking or to correct mistakes and so on. Thank you, Teresa. Great idea involving technology or any other thing related to technology that can be incorporated or that you have incorporated.
Teacher, as you say, including gamification in our classes is very, very important because the students get involved because they try to gain a lot of resources for the team, and you see that teamwork, right, in this kind of activities.
Amazing, Teresa. Absolutely right.
Thank you.
Gamification is a pretty good strategy because students are learning in a meaningful way, but they're also having fun. And they learn to cooperate as a society, as a team, and they are moving to a common objective, which is learning. That's fantastic. Thank you, Teresa. So, if you have any final thought, a reflection, any question, let me know. Otherwise, here I'm going to provide you the link to the full research paper so you can check it with a bit more detail. There are much more experiences and insights by students, so I'm sure that it can be pretty beneficial for you in order to incorporate this in future lessons. So, once saying this, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for this warm welcome. Your participation was great, and also sharing this experience was fantastic. So, thank you so much, and I hope that you have enjoyed this wonderful experience. Thank you so much. Thanks to you for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.